Hello, everybody.
Yes,
I'm
hi.
Jay. I'm Jay. This is Hussein. Welcome to Staying Sane with me and Hussein. All
Yes.
right, we're here for this week's news wrap up. So let's jump right in. So this week, again, we have a couple of stories from Israel. So I mentioned last week that U.S.
Mm.
Secretary of State Anthony Blinken had arrived for talks. This week, he accused Netanyahu of making, quote, maximalist statements that are, quote, not constructive to getting a ceasefire deal across the finish line. Netanyahu later told a meeting of the hostage families that he convinced Mr. Blinken that the deal must see Israeli troops remaining in areas of Gaza as described as strategic military and political assets, including along the southern border with Egypt. The comment irritated the U.S. administration, and a senior official speaking anonymously said, and I quote, I would also just add that maximalist statements like this are not constructive to getting a ceasefire deal across the finish line, and they certainly risk the ability of implementing working level, and technical talks to be able to move forward when both parties agree to a bridging proposal. Mr. Blinken said, and I quote, the agreement is very clear on the schedule and locations of IDF withdrawals from Gaza, and Israel has agreed to that. Asked by the BBC whether Netanyahu's claim that the Israeli leader had convinced Blinken to keep troops in Gaza, Blinken replied, I can't speak to what he quoted as saying. I can just speak to what I heard him directly yesterday when we spent 3 hours together. Israel's endorsement of the bridging proposal and thus the detailed plan, and that plan, among other things, includes a clear schedule and locations for withdrawals. End quote. And the other story from Israel this week also mentioned last week that the Israel Hezbollah situation was heating up, which, well, it erupted into a major escalation, both sides firing rockets on the other. Israel claims it's deployed over 100 aircraft and hit 40 launch sites in southern Lebanon, and Hezbollah claims it hit 11 Israeli bases. And today, the UN is calling on both sides to calm the fuck down. So, over to you, Hussein.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jason. So today we have a very gruesome news that's from um, Afghanistan. That's by Taliban this time again. So this is something related to the women. And as you always expect, something if it is coming from Afghanistan, that will be some way related to women, because that's one area where Taliban focuses too much. And this time it's about the voices and the faces of women that's been banned in public. So the Taliban rulers, they issued a ban on women's voices and bare faces in public under new laws approved by the supreme leader in efforts to combat vice and promote virtue. So when we say this, uh, to combat vice and promote virtue. This is an exact translation of a word that is mentioned in the Holy Scripture, that's the Quran. So this is something that is a part of the Scripture, a part of the religious their existence. So they have to do it. So we always say that this is something Taliban is doing out of way. This is misconstrued from Islam. That's not the right Islam. Uh, these are the common arguments that's being raised by the public, especially the people around who are not aware of what Islam in reality is. So for them, this is a chance to learn what exactly is this. So here, it contains a lot of articles where it mentions how to combat the vice and to promote virtue. So here, when it comes to women, there lies the real problem. So here we can read from that Article 13 that is related to women. It says it is mandatory for a woman to veil her body at all times in public, and that a face covering is essential to avoid temptation and tempting others. So this is how it is mentioned. So we always talk about the niqab and the hijab. These are the two versions of the hijab that we always say, that niqab is the face covering, hijab is something that you cover your head. This is the common notion among the public. But in fact, uh, niqab is, or the face veil is a part of the hijab. That is what is mentioned as per the Islamic rules and other things. So as per the rule, Islamic rule, what it really matters is that your face, if it is tempting someone else, then it has to be covered. So the reason for covering is to stop temptations. So here, even the same exact religious
So
aspect
they
is
so
being
so are they saying ugly girls don't have to cover up because they're not tempting? Is
no
that the
questions
logical
asked.
conclusion?
No
Okay.
questions asked. Is
Okay.
there's also another version of this. That is, if a person is blind, and if a girl goes in front of that blind man, uh, is that required that that girl should cover or not? She whether she can be completely naked also, but that's not the way it is taken out. So it's all about a kind of rule that is being put forward by a so-called God, which is going out of place, out of logic, and all these things are even taken up as some serious government affairs as part of this Taliban ruling. That's what we are seeing here, and that's what it makes a whole a comedy show. That's what is going on there. So this is the article or the passage from that. So it is forbidden to for women to look at men they are not related to by blood or marriage, and vice versa. So this is something related to that, and some another aspects, that is from Article 17, that bans the publication of images of living beings threatening an already fragile Afghan media landscape. That's what we can read from the news report. That is, as per Islamic rule, you are not supposed to draw or to model something which is a living creature. So you cannot draw an animal, you cannot draw a human being, or even a tree. Drawing a tree is not permitted. So this is something that is now being applied as part of this promotion of virtue. Then comes Article 19, that's the playing of music, the transportation of solo female travelers, and the mixing of men and women who are not related to each other. That's the Mahram law that we saw, which got banned or which got ripped off from the Saudi government, where it was a part of their Sharia, the Mahram law, where you must travel with someone who is related to you always. For a woman, that's the rule. But now that rule is being lifted, and the women there, they can drive, they can travel alone, they can even dress in whatever way they want. So that's now permitted over there. But still, what we are seeing is that on one hand, we can see religion getting um, uh, what do you say, scrapped off from the public in some Islamic countries like Saudi Arabia. And at the same time, you are seeing this religion is being imposed more and more into these people, especially in this Asian region, that is this region, that's the Indian subcontinent, and even in my place, we can see that. So that's what we are experiencing in all over the world. This is what is happening. If you look at the way the hijab protest is being addressed, even then also you can see hijab is being seen as a symbol of oppression, and something that should be kept outside, which should be thrown out of your culture and other aspects. That's how it is being seen in the Middle East. Most of the countries, they always try to keep it aside whenever they get a chance. But when you come to these places, especially when you go to the Western countries or to Indian subcontinent or this area, in democratic scenarios, you can see that bigger calls being made to promote hijab, and whoever questions it is being called as Islamophobe, and all these things. These are the things what we see always, and we need to address this at some point of the time. A time will come where we will be more seeing lot of issues based on this, that is hijab and other things. It is even yet to come. The problem is yet to come. So this is something what we can see here. And I think now, in a nutshell, this is going to make the lives of the women, especially women and children in Afghanistan, in a big mess. They are living in a hell. That's what we get from that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. In the comments, so the podcast that was released last week,
Mhm.
I interviewed Dr. Moro, who is an Islamic scholar who's written a book on the history of the hijab. So in the comments, for any of our viewers who might be interested, You can check out the link for the most recent podcast that discusses the history of the hijab and how it's interpreted, how different cultures apply it. So if as Hussein was talking about the issue in Afghanistan, you can check it out and educate yourself on how it has been interpreted across time and in different societies. So by all means, educate yourself.
Yeah.
Cool.
Let's move on to other stories from you. By the time I'll take the other one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Moving down under to Australia. A member of the Ministry of God cult has been convicted of beating her 2-year-old daughter to death in 1987. Her remains were allegedly burned by the sect leader and gathered and scattered at their commune in New South Wales. Um, and he's been charged with accessory to murder and later over separate sexual assault allegations. But he's a terminally ill man, so he's now been declared unfit to stand trial. However, the mother said, and she says, and I quote, "I will never forgive myself for what I have done." And she thanked the judge for putting her at peace and the justice that has been dished out to her. In France, police have arrested a man for setting fires and causing an explosion outside a synagogue in the southern city of Nimes. 5 people, including the rabbi, were inside. The explosion was caused by 2 cars which were set alight, and police sources claimed one of the vehicles contained a hidden gas canister. The suspect was reportedly carrying a Palestinian flag, who also set fire to several entrance doors of the synagogue. The French Jewish community has been living under high security, and many synagogues and schools are under police protection, and there has been widespread condemnation of the attack across the political spectrum. Moving to Germany, an Islamic State terrorist stabbed and killed 3 and wounded 8 in Solingen during a city festival. The person responsible is a Syrian refugee who turned himself into police, and Islamic State has claimed responsibility for the attack. Finally, in the Philippines, thousands of police officers raided the Kingdom of Jesus Christ compound late Saturday in search of a pastor who's been accused of child sex trafficking and other crimes. And this pastor refers to himself as the appointed Son of God, don't they all? Police reports saying they used tear gas against his followers who had become unruly and violent. Some of their followers blocked parts of the highway to disrupt traffic and block the compound. He's been accused of trafficking followers to the US to solicit donations for bogus charities. He's also allegedly required female followers, some of them underage, to have sex with him as part of their religious duties. And he claimed the devil is behind the charges against him. Again, don't they always make that claim? Back to you. Hussein.
Yeah. We have a question here that's from the secular. That is, please discuss whether getting a ceasefire deal without eliminating the threat of Hamas is good for Palestinians or not. What's your
Well,
opinion?
that's what's going on right now with Blinken, right? Blinken and others in the region are negotiating the peace terms, one to return the few remaining hostages from October 7th. Um, Netanyahu has been adamant that Hamas must be destroyed, but as many Israeli journalists have pointed out, that is one, it's both unrealistic, and two, it's just Netanyahu's way of stalling. Um, I I I think we're going to have to wait and see on this one. I mean, Hamas isn't going away as much as Israel would like to wipe them off the map. Um, I would think, when you're bombing, when you've killed something like 30,000 civilians, you've created a whole bunch more Hamas members. So I don't think a getting rid of Hamas for good, we
Mm.
could weaken them, we can bring them to the table, they're fighting because they have nothing else to lose. But if they come to the negotiating table and they see a future for them and their people, granted these people are stealing millions for themselves, so they are crooks. So, but it's one of those wait and see. We're just gonna have to see how history plays out on this one.
So when you say all the real problems or the real reasons why Hamas is a terrorist outfit or why they are a problem, and when you say a but at the end, isn't that making the whole situation, which is or creating a smoke screen? Uh,
What do you
Don't you
what do
think that way? Like,
I
um, we are dealing with a terrorist outfit, and Israel is a country. And in that way, when they are dealing with this problem, and when you mention about the number of the children getting killed in the Gazan region, and there's no any mentioning about the release of the hostages. So don't you think that there's an imbalance when addressing this problem? We are only talking about the number of children that is getting killed, even though the reason for those people or those kids are getting killed is something else, something that is more closely associated with the problems that is actually created by Hamas themselves.
Well, again, this is a very complicated, very
Mm,
nuanced issue that goes back decades. You
mm,
cannot you cannot look at what happened on October 7th in a vacuum and just say, "Oh, this happened as an isolated." You've got to look at the whole history of the region, going back before 1947 and what was going on. But obviously, what happened in 1947, 48 with the creation of Israel and the Arab-Israeli War, and what has happened in the intervening years. All of this has to be factored in, and this is what scholars and Israeli journalists have been saying that this is my biggest problem with Netanyahu, is he's he's a consummate politician. He's so used to just spewing bullshit, that he's been doing it for so long. I saw, and I think I maybe mentioned this in previous weeks.
mm,
Um, I saw a clip of him. I think it was in the 80s, might have been the 90s. It might have been an American or a European talk show that Netanyahu and a Palestinian professor, I believe his name was Professor Said, S-A-I-D, as I recall. And Netanyahu, being the bullshit artist of the nth degree that he is, says, well, I didn't want to come on here because, Professor Said wants to murder me. It's just rhetorical bullshit. It has absolutely no bearing. Like, obviously, on national television program or a regional television program where you've been invited to discuss, and you have a professor, a respected professor, coming on to discuss what's going on. Obviously, he's not going to come on, with a gun or a knife and kill Netanyahu. But Netanyahu is such a fucking asshole. I hate this guy. I cannot express how much I fucking hate this guy. And
mm.
lots of Israelis don't like him either. Like, you've seen all the protests. That Netanyahu is just such, like, he's a player. Like, he just spews this rhetoric like, oh, all the Palestinians just want to murder us. He is
Mm.
such an obstacle to the peace process, which is why so many people want him fucking gone. Because we can't, if he's going to insist on these red lines that will never be met, then it's obvious that he's not interested in peace. He's interested in having a scapegoat.
Yeah.
So,
So when we look at the whole issue, and when we depend or when we um, see the mannerisms, the political mannerisms of the Netanyahu, and that is a reason for justifying or for foregoing what is being done by the Hamas on the other side. Don't you see that, or don't you feel that that's not the right way, especially when Hamas, the people who belongs to that outfit, they have a predetermined or uh, a kind of a doctrine which mentions about anti-Semitism, which is being um, incorporated in their blood, and that is their sole, their goal. In that
yeah, but
way,
that's Hamas, and
hmm,
Hamas was, I think it was the 90s,
no, no,
Hamas was elected.
no. My point
That's
is, this imbalance is getting more and more visible
the imbalance between who?
between this the reality on both sides. So on one side, this anti-Semitism is the core issue, the real issue, and on the other side, we are just depending upon the political mannerisms to defend this.
Well, I would say the anti-Semitism of Hamas is what's the word I want? Is a factor in the Palestinian struggle,
Mm,
right? If you look at Palestine and the British Mandate, like before 47, 48,
mm,
you have a small percentage of Israeli Jews who are still living there, and the majority had been dispersed in the various diasporas. The big
mm,
one going back to like 135 and the Bar Kokhba revolt, when I think it was Emperor Hadrian expelled the Jews from the Holy Land and renamed it. That's when he
mm.
renamed it Palestine.
Palestine, yeah.
So it was Hadrian. I'm pretty sure it was Hadrian, Emperor Hadrian, who named it Syria Palestine, like who renamed that region after they expelled the Jews. So, again, you got to think of this contextually. Had that not happened, had the Jews continued to live in Israel for the last 2,000 years alongside the Palestinians, there wouldn't have been that influx post World War II, all of the oppression that the Jews had suffered in Europe for 2,000 years and coming back. And, granted, most of the Jews had bought land from the Palestinians, but, the war is complicated. So my issue with Israel is they have completely washed their hands of any responsibility of the Palestinian refugee crisis. It's stated point blank on their website for the Ministry of, well, one of their propaganda ministries. I
Mm,
can't remember which one it is. States categorically, we have no, we didn't do anything. The Palestinians, the refugee problems, not even though the right of return was denied to the Palestinians, and you had Palestinians living in refugee camps for generations. Israel, oh, it had nothing to do with us. We had nothing, even though we denied the right of return, the perpetuation of the Palestinian refugee crisis, not our fault. Sorry, but that's just bullshit. That's just propaganda on their part, and it doesn't stand up to history. And the Israeli journalists have pointed out that the expulsions when the Israeli war cabinet during the Arab-Israeli war, when they they recognized that the Palestinians were fleeing, the expulsions by the IDF forces and one of the other, I can't remember the name of one of the other Israeli fighting factions, increased. They started like the Jewish atrocities against the Palestinians increased and the expulsions increased. And as there's a book called The Unmaking of Israel by an Israeli journalist, Gershon Thornberg, and he says the expulsions turned into a choice that the Israeli government specifically started, accelerating the expulsions. So
mm.
this is where I say October 7th did not happen in a vacuum. The Israelis
Definitely.
have basically dispossessed the
Mm.
Palestinian, or the Israeli government, not the Israeli people. We should be very clear,
Yeah.
in
Even.
our language, that the Israeli state has
Mm,
dispossessed the Palestinians. They have, and even one of the Israeli journalists, says, "How is this safe for us? How is it making it safe for Israel and Israelis when you keep fucking over the Palestinians and you create more
mm,
terrorists? This does not make us safe." So,
mm. So even when we say this, there's a counter narrative that gained some popularity during this problem. That's what we are seeing today. That is something from two aspects. That is, one is from West Bank. The people in West Bank, especially Mahmoud Abbas, he disowned Hamas and their actions, and he even criticized Hamas for causing this trouble. That's one part of the this aspect, and the second part is that even the people who are living in Gaza, they have started criticizing Hamas and saying that they are the
yeah,
real
yeah, for sure,
people, yeah,
for sure.
who caused this problem. And so
I
when we,
I s-
so
I saw a
yeah,
stat that, or
mm,
it was a podcast, and somebody was saying that I think like Hamas, I believe, was elected by the
yeah,
Palestinians, and I think they said that they were elected in the 90s. But demographically, the majority of Palestinians today weren't even alive when Hamas was elected. And yes, the majority of people are pissed off at Hamas for what they've done to their own people,
yeah,
stealing
yeah,
in millions in aid. Yeah, I mean, obviously Hamas needs to go, but
and also,
again,
mm,
terrorism is a means to an end, right? They want freedom and human rights for their people.
mm,
Yes, they're also, as I said, the anti-Semitism is a factor, but
mm,
ultimately, like, what have they been fighting for 70 years? It's for freedom and independence. So I mean,
yeah,
everybody's freedom fighter is somebody else's terrorist, right? So yes, Hamas is a terrorist organization. Yes, they
mm,
have committed atrocities. But as I pointed out, my brother is quite the gun
mm,
aficionado and freedom fighter himself,
mm,
in his own mind.
mm,
And we got into, like, after October 7th, we got into a big argument, and I'm like, you're such a hypocrite. You're Mr. Weekend Warrior. you'd be the first one on the front lines if we were Palestinians. Like how can you sit there and criticize the Palestinians when you'd be the first one to defend them if we were Palestinian? You'd be out there with your gun, because you're Mr. Weekend Warrior. So
Mm. Even don't you think that this time we had this discussion? So even again, I'm asking that um, unlike every other Gaza, Israel, or Palestine Israel issues, this time the focus has shifted clearly from a resistant movement to anti Semitism. Don't you think that way? This time, anti
yeah,
Semitism gained some kind of
well,
an attention.
there's an element of that, yes, but as we know, the
Mm,
majority of the Palestinians, the citizenry, not the Hamas, are fed up with Hamas, and they
absolutely.
want peace. They want peace. They don't want to.
They have
They want,
realized the relevance of
yeah,
peace. Yeah.
yeah. So
Anyway, so let's hope things will be cleared very soon.
yeah, we need, like, on both sides. We've got to get rid of the
Yeah.
extremists on both sides, both Netanyahu, the West Bank settlers who are terrorizing the
Mm,
Palestinians in the West Bank, and Hamas,
mm,
and Hezbollah, and the Iranian regime, these all of these extremists,
mm.
and
So,
there are extremists in Israel too,
mm,
these ultra-Orthodox illegal
mm.
settlers, they're terrorizing, they're killing people,
Mm.
they're fucking assholes.
Yeah.
And why are they doing that? They're, oh, because the Bible says we're the chosen people and this land belongs to us, so we can do whatever the hell we want to the Palestinians. Like, that's
Mm,
just as messed up.
we also have a history in the past that is Egypt as a country was expelled from the OIC just because Egypt was normalizing the relationship with Israel, and for the same reason, Egypt was expelled from this OIC. So
When did that happen?
yeah, that happened. I think um, I'll just come up with the year, and the reason was uh, anyway. The reason was that for an Islamic country to have a friendly relationship with a Jewish state is almost a something as per the Islamic word that is, Arabic word is it's haram. So you are supposed to kill every Jew. So that's how Islam teaches. And contrary to that, when you have a friendly relationship with a Jewish country, that's something against Islam. That's what they were
Well,
mentioning.
yes and no, because
Yeah.
don't forget, you have Christians and Jews are people of the book. And many
Mm,
Jews lived in the Ottoman Empire, they lived in the
mm.
Andalusia, in Muslim Spain
That's
for centuries.
mm, yeah. That's another aspect which we have to clear. That is, uh, in Islam, there's a chronological aspect also. That is, you have a period when Prophet Muhammad lived in Mecca and he was not a strong power. And then he did this hijrah to Medina, and then he rose to the power, and he was having a lot of military base and other things. And then he came back and conquered Mecca. That's the two part of this whole Islamic story. So when he lived in Mecca before this hijrah, he was having a very diplomatic approach towards everything, and he called on the people of the book and many other beautiful names. Your religion, to me, my religion. These were the beautiful words that was used. But after that, what happened was kill the kafir wherever you meet them. This is the words which abrogated the earlier one, and it was replacing the earlier one. So this aspect, that is the abrogation, and how the earlier ones were replaced with more serious and more terrorizing statements, most of the Muslims and most of the critics fail to understand this. This is one area. So earlier, people of the book, and you can marry, you can eat whatever they give you. These were the instructions. And afterwards, what happened? Afterwards, the people of the books, that is Christians and Jews, they were called as pigs and monkeys, and they were called as
But but they still lived amongst the
yeah.
Muslims for
The
centuries.
reason why they lived, that's something else, because uh, especially in the modern times we have a resurgence of this Puritanism, the Wahhabi Islam, and they have a clear idea, or they have a clear intention of what to do with all these people. But when you come to India, you can see here we have a very good Muslim population which was coexisting with the Hindu population here, and they were living there like that. But into them there came a group of other Muslims who were carrying this version of Islam, which is more towards this Wahhabism, and which was directly imported from the Middle East through these petrodollars and other means. And what they cost in our land is that even now we are seeing a rise of Islamism, a rise of this a loss of confidence between the Hindus and the Muslims here. And now we even saw a kind of such aspects even during our freedom struggle. 1921, we speak about some of the rebellions which began as a movement against the British, but later on turned out to be a jihadi movement. We even saw that. So it is there since 1921. So it was always there, but the problem was their number was very less. But now what we see is that their number is increasing. More and more Muslims are going towards that kind of an area. But at the same time, we are also seeing that more Muslims are leaving Islam and,
Ex-Muslims.
yeah, leaving out of this. So now I think this is a good move, or this is something inevitable that can happen to Islam, and that will make this whole world beautiful. So, in spite of seeing all these problems around the world, what we saw in Germany yesterday, or what we are seeing in Afghanistan today, yes, these are happening, but this is happening for something good. Even this time when this October 7th happened and all this war began, we got an idea of, or the world realized slowly, at least, what or who are behind this anti Semitism, really, who are behind that. And now people are accepting the reality, and they are now able to address that. That's what we are seeing today. I think that's something, or some goodness out of a bad incident. We cannot call some October 7th happened for a good thing. I cannot say that, but still,
No.
people are realizing the reality. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
Oh,
think with one, the Palestinians are fed up with Hamas, and two,
mm,
we're seeing the rise, the huge rise of non-belief amongst all
mm,
of the three major monotheistic faiths. So
yeah.
I I would like to be cautiously optimistic and think that within the next generation, hopefully we'll see a
Mm,
a calming down of Middle Eastern tensions
absolutely.
as secularism takes hold, and there's more and more ex-Muslims and more ex-Jews, and we're just human beings, and we
Absolutely.
can talk to each other as humans. So I would hope that within the next generation
You mean
we're
to
gonna
say
see
that a
that.
planet of atheists?
Not a plan. I mean, they're always going to have believers, right? There's always going to be
Okay.
a smaller, a declining percentage of people who will still believe.
Mm,
And I don't
yeah.
know any. I mean, yes, there are a handful. I mean, there are some atheists who advocate for like a complete stamping out of religion, but
Mm,
that's just as intolerant as the religion that, does it to other faiths. Like,
mm,
secularism and humanism, just believe whatever you want. Like,
mm,
the Atheist Alliance International, other atheists, we're not telling people you have to be atheist. Just
mm,
you want to be religious, fine, go do whatever you want. Just don't impose your beliefs,
mm,
in the classroom, on women's rights, gay rights, do you do you, the rest of us will do us. So
yeah.
I can't see that, we would turn around and crush religion. Like it's always going to be part of the human condition. It's just going to
Mm,
be a dwindling number that, I referred to it as, projecting into the future that one
mhm.
day, we'll look at the 1% of people who still believe in God and think, that they need some psychological help.
Okay. So, okay, shall we move on to some
Sure.
one
Well, I
one or
see
two?
there's a question here about cultural Christians. So
Okay.
I'm not really sure what you mean by cultural Christians, but let me just jump back up here.
Yeah.
There was a question here about why can't Jews, let me put it on the screen, why can't Jews pray at their holy site? Isn't it a discrimination? So the reason for that, this is it's in Israeli law, that because the Dome of the Rock, which was built on top of the original Solomon's temple, to keep the peace, the Israeli government has said, and I think it was an Ottoman emperor. I can't remember. It's in my notes somewhere. one of the Ottoman empires prior to the British Mandate of Palestine had allowed Jews to pray at the Western or the Wailing Wall. So that was a Muslim ruler who said, "Yes, please come. You can come to the temple and pray at the wall, but the Dome of the Rock that's on top of Temple Mount, is ours." So to keep tensions from flaring, and that's what happened. I reported last week that one of these um, extremist government ministers in Netanyahu's coalition led a group of ultra-Orthodox to the Dome of the Rock, specifically to stoke tensions. You know, these ultra-Orthodox Israelis, like they're pulling the tiger's tail. They want to stoke tensions. They want this to blow up into a wider war so that they can justify, annihilating their enemies. And that's exactly why the Israeli government says Dome of the Rock is off limits. There was in the 70s, I believe we talked about this a few weeks ago. We were discussing the Camp David Accords, which I believe we said was 78. There was a plot by Israeli extremists to blow up the Dome of the Rock to try to disrupt the Camp David Accords. And you can imagine, had they succeeded, what would have happened? You would have pissed off every radical, or you would have radicalized even more Muslims, and Israel would have been destroyed. So, of course, when the Mossad and Israeli intelligence discovered this plot, of course they shut it down, right? Because they know the danger of playing these kinds of games. That we've got to be reasonable. We can't just let the wackos like loose in the china shop because they will destroy everything. So.
Yeah. So, okay. So I have posted the link to the hijab, the video on our channel, so you can watch that. So and also please leave a comment under that, so that if you wish to have any more subjects to be discussed that same way, you can just let us know, so that we can have that. So okay, moving on, we have something as a reminder, that is a World International Apostasy Day, that was on 22nd August, and that was declared by the Ex-Muslims Council of Britain, and they were the organization behind this announcement. And since 2021, they are having this day being celebrated in this way. So this year also they had some campaigns, and they created some this contest on social media to raise awareness. So that was something that we must maybe from next year onwards, if AAI could uh, take part in such celebrations, we can get more people know about apostasy and the reasons behind the struggles faced by ex-Muslims and other people like them. So I think that that will be something a good idea. So that's one reminder. And moving on, there's a news about an attack, a militant attack in Pakistan, Balochistan region. More than 60 people are dead. This is not related directly to religion, but still something we saw from Pakistan. That is the militants behind this Balochistan movement. So they have claimed it. So separatist militants attack on police stations, railway lines, and highways in Pakistan, restive province of Balochistan, coupled with retaliatory operations by security forces, killing more than 60 people. That's the toll of death that's being reported now. So that's one news. And another one is from two separate bus crashes in Pakistan leave at least 36 people dead. And two accidents. One is from Iraq and the second one is from Iran. So there was a Shiite pilgrimage that was going on there. That's a Arba'in festival. So people were going towards that, and while going, a group of people traveling in a bus met with an accident, and this much people died. So this is something that happened over there. More than 36 people got killed. So that's it.
Okay. So
Yeah,
that's it for this week.
absolutely. Hope
Okay.
we made some sense.
Well, we try. So all we can
Okay.
do. We're just neither one of us is experts. We're just commentators, and we bring the benefit of our
Hmm.
experience and our life, experiences to the table. And all we can do is just, as I said, with
Yeah.
Israel, we just got to wait and see, how this is going
Yeah.
to play out. Hopefully, cooler heads prevail. So,
Thank you.
okay. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining this week. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll catch everybody next week.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Yes. Bye bye.